Hello, and thank you for joining me for this second community workshop as part of the Town of Carefree General Plan Update. I'm Matt Kleisico with Michael Baker International. We are a planning and design firm that was hired by Carefree to assist in facilitating this townwide planning effort. As the slide shows, we conducted our second in-person community workshop for this project on April 26th. Consequently, this virtual presentation is provided to offer Carefree community members who are unable to join us for this meeting an alternative way to stay involved and share your feedback. Now, the purpose of this particular meeting is twofold. First, it's primarily to share community feedback, particularly in regard to the community survey that was put out as part of this general plan update. But it's also to gain some final input from residents so that we can establish a foundation for the preparation, the actual drafting of the general plan elements or chapters. So this is a very important workshop in terms of getting that input from community members to give us a firm foundation to start putting pen to paper. Now, if you joined us for our first community workshop, this graphic is going to be very familiar to you. If you haven't joined us for any previous general plan update workshops, you can see that this particular graphic provides an overview of our general plan process. I'm not going to go over it in great detail, but for those that have not viewed this, we basically break out the general plan process into 4 distinct phases. We have our recognize, enrich, and achieve phases, and then engagement is intertwined throughout the general plan process. You can see the various steps that are associated with each phase on the slide. And the yellow triangle identifies that we're now getting into the early stages of our enrich phase, which is where we would start drafting the general plan, as I mentioned on the previous slide. So some of the key takeaways from our recognize phase, which we just completed, is our community workshop 1 that was facilitated back in February. So we had good turnout for that and gained some helpful and very informative responses from community members at that particular meeting. We also conducted some pop-up workshops where we set up a booth outside the post office and spoke with residents as they collected their mail. We had 2 of those, one at the end of March and the other at the beginning of April. And all of that information was added to our information that we gained through our in-person events, whether it be our workshop or our online efforts in terms of our community survey. So all of it is being collected and being utilized to inform our writing efforts. The last point that I'll make on this particular slide is please keep in mind that this general plan process doesn't just end at the achieve phase. While we do take the plan to the Planning Commission for recommendation and then to Planning Commission or to Council, I should say, for approval, ultimately the plan is not finalized until it's placed on what we're currently working towards as the November 2024 ballot for final voter ratification. So unlike any other planning or community-led effort within the town, this general plan is actually finalized by a vote of town residents. And so it's very important for us to hear your input and for you to stay engaged with this process, because at the end, we're going to ask you to hopefully validate the plan at the ballot box. And we want to make sure that the plan incorporates the components of the community that are most important to residents. So here's a few graphics just to kind of show some of the events and efforts that we've conducted. It's by no means comprehensive. We have several other social media postings and articles and emails and HOA announcements and flyers that have all gone out. But these are just some images of our community workshop #1, our pop-up booth at the post office, and our project webpage. All making sure that we provide those different touch points within the community so that residents can join in the process based off their busy calendars and in a way that is most convenient for them, whether that be in person, online, or by other means. Now, the format of this particular workshop was broken out over 3 stations. And so after I go through these stations, you're more than welcome to jump right into the virtual workshop and view those boards and then answer the questions associated with that particular station. Or you're more than welcome to stay with me, and I will be, after this particular slide, walking through some of the results of the survey. But overall, the stations focus on the survey results. So station 1, there's not too much feedback. It's giving the highlights and detail of the survey responses. Station 2 is then the vision revision. So as part of community workshop #1, we pulled up the vision statement from the current general plan and asked residents to comment on that vision statement. What would they like to change? What would they like to preserve? And based on those comments, we then drafted a couple different vision statement options. And we're asking you, the residents, to look at those 2 options and identify what you like or dislike of those options so that we then land on a preferred approach moving forward. That vision statement is very important to the overall foundation of the plan because all the goals and policies are going to be prepared to roll up to achieve that vision. And so it really does set the tone and foundation for the plan, and therefore we hope that you take some time to look that over and give your input. The last station, 3, is goal validation. And goal validation is really, we pulled out the goals in the existing general plan, and we're asking you to review those goals and simply let us know whether they should be kept, removed, or revised. By gaining your feedback, we will start to get a better sense for areas of the plan that we should preserve, that are doing their job, that are supporting the community in the way that they were intended to. And so we don't want to change those items that don't need to be changed. But if we see feedback from the community that a particular goal might need some more refinement in order to clarify its exact intent or achieve its desired outcome, well, then your feedback will help us zero in on those areas that need maybe further attention. So those are the 3 primary stations or areas of input that we're looking to have your feedback. So again, at this point in the presentation, you're more than welcome to skip over to the feedback boards themselves, or stay with me. And the next few slides, I'm just going to give a broad overview of the survey results. Well, if you stayed with me, thanks for joining the survey results discussion. Overall, you can see on the slide that the survey was open from March 17th to April 17th. We received a total of 362 responses. That's a great turnout. We always would love to have more responses, but for a community the size of Carefree, 362 responses are great, and they're great in the sense that that number is actually a statistically significant sample size, meaning that we have a higher confidence level that even if we were to go out and collect more responses from the community, that the results would generally be consistent with what we're seeing within the current outcomes that the survey showed. So getting into the questions themselves, question 1, we just asked Are you a full-time, part-time resident of Carefree? Do you own property or a business? And you can see that the results actually kind of align with the somewhat composition of the community today, that yes, 75% of responses were full-time residents, but we do have a part of the community that are part-time residents. And so some of the survey results showed that 11% of those are part-time residents. And then we have others that are property owners, and then a smaller portion that are business owners. Now, I should mention up front that these are just the broad results of the survey. On particular questions where it does say other or share more input, all of those individual responses are in the formal survey report that you can go to the project website and review in more detail. So I would encourage you to still open that report, because while some of the overall responses are detailed in there, any individual comments, which there were many for any particular question, are all listed. So there was no abbreviation of the responses. We wanted to share all of the comments that any of your friends or neighbors provided, so that if there were other observations that residents had, we wanted to hear those and not just be limited by the options that the particular questions presented. Now, for question 2, how long have you lived or owned property or a business in Carefree? We had a good distribution of responses, which again gives us some higher confidence in terms of hearing from those residents who may have lived here for a shorter period, 5 years or less. So you can see in the green and yellow, compared to those that have lived here maybe 6 to 20 years. Kind of in the orange to brown area, and then those that are 20 years or more, so in the gray 26 percentile area. So as we're drafting the plan, we see benefit in hearing from those residents that are here a shorter period, that may have different observations from those residents that have been here for longer periods. And they all bring different thoughts and ideas to the table. Now, what is your age range? Yes, we all know that Carefree does have a higher median age than other communities we'll see in Maricopa County or Arizona overall. And so this slide confirms that, as you can see, almost 60% of those who responded are age 65 or older. And even with that, majority of those who responded were 45 years or older. So not too surprising that here, at least, the results are generally consistent with census data information. Now, when we look at gender, we see almost an exact balance of 48 to 50%. So don't know that we can even get much tighter than that. And it's good to see that we're getting representation from all aspects of the community. Now, in addition to some of those other conditions, we also wanted to geographically look at where are we hearing from residents. So we broke up the town into 4 different areas. And you can see, based on the results, that we had good distribution within those areas, particularly when we keep in mind the density or number, if you will, of residents in those particular areas. So areas 2, 3, and 4, we had a good balance of responses. And then area 1, which has a lower density in terms of the number of residents, that was reflected in the number of responses that we received from that particular area. So good distribution across the town. I'm happy to see that we're not heavily skewed in one area of the town over the other, which helps us make sure that when we're crafting goals and policies, that we're not focusing on one particular portion of the community over another. So in question 6, why do you choose to live in Carefree? Well, you can see in those top even 4 responses. A lot of them are all predicated on that notion of the natural environment, open space, semi-rural character, um, recreation and trail opportunities, all related to that quality of life and carefree, of being kind of in the natural environment and having a little bit more open space. So all of those results were consistent with generally the tone of the general plan today. And so that helps us understand that that some of the key elements that residents hold or cherish are consistent today as they were 10 years ago when the plan was last comprehensively updated. Question 7 was a very involved question in terms of it gave many different trends that are existing in or around Carefree today. And so we wanted to report on all of the results for this particular response rather than some type of weighted average. So you can go into the survey report that I mentioned before and look at these responses in a little more detail, because I know on this particular slide it's a smaller font. But we did highlight that maybe 4 key areas that if you're looking specifically at those responses where residents identified that it was essential or very important trend that we should be considering, those top 4 focused on traffic congestion, semi-rural character, town fiscal sustainability, and natural open space and resource preservation. So those areas give us direction in terms of possibly seeking more feedback from community members. And so you'll see in the input boards as part of this virtual workshop, you have the opportunity to even share a little bit more input of responses or further feedback that are critical to or associated with those top 4 options. So this particular slide, in this workshop, we're asking for more feedback to help us zero in now on those areas that residents identified as being very important or essential to the community over the next 10 or 20 years. Now, question 8, how would you rate the overall quality of life in the town? Here it was very encouraging to see that majority of responses identified Carefree as quality of life as being good to excellent. And so we certainly want to preserve those feelings as we draft this general plan update. And actually, maybe we can, as a result of some of the outcomes of this general plan, seek to even get those responses higher in terms of quality of life. So Carefree is doing a good job, and it's going to be this general plan update's responsibility to preserve that and then build on it. Now, as part of question 9, to proactively assist Carefree in planning for the future, what are some of the main issues the town should focus on in the next 10 or 20 years? You can see that the top 3 responses actually were open space preservation, water conservation, and water treatment, followed by town fiscal health, town communication, and public safety. So all topics that are very important, ones that are top of mind, I think, across the community right now. So no surprise to us in terms of where residents' focus is. But those are areas that we're going to be looking at in more detail in this update effort. Not to say that we're not going to look at all those other areas, but this helps tell us, again, like we discussed in previous responses, where we should focus our attention compared to where we might want to preserve or make minimal changes. So, so this helps guide us in terms of where we might want to be more specific in our editing and updating efforts. Now, that gives the overview of the survey responses. Again, I encourage you, if you have the time, to look at the survey report. It provides more detail in terms of the individual responses that may have been shared by residents on any particular question. And it also gives you a chance to look at some of the responses and formulate some of your own observations that you might bring to future meetings as far as sharing your input or comments relative to the process as it moves along. Now, these boards are going to look a little different as you provide your feedback online, but I at least will discuss them for the purposes of, again, Station 2 is looking at vision revision. So at this particular station, you see we have two vision options of option A and option B. We're asking residents to identify what version they prefer, either the long option A or the more condensed option B, and then provide any comments of final edits that you would like to see to either option that you prefer. Station 3, goal validation. As I mentioned before, this has all of the goals from the current general plan organized by chapter. And we're just asking you to help identify what you think should be kept, removed, or revised. Your feedback on that, just like the survey, will guide us to focus on those particular goals that may need more attention compared to ones that are doing their job and providing the outcomes that were crafted to accomplish, compared to maybe some goals that need further refinement to either address present issues or refine outcomes that aren't consistent with where the community wants to go in the next 10 or 20 years. Now, as part of next steps, action items, we're working towards publishing the existing conditions analysis to the project website. So you can, in addition to looking at the community survey, you can go through that document and see some of the background information that was prepared for the community. We're having a council work session briefing on May 2nd. That will be followed by a Planning and Zoning Commission work session in June. And then our next community workshop will be June 19th. And so we know that some residents might be traveling over the summer months. If you can't join that in-person meeting, we will again have a virtual option for you to participate. And speaking of participating, if you want to remind or share with your neighbors about how to stay involved, continue to visit the town's website and go to the link at the top of the page. It will bring you to the project website, or sign up for updates through the Carefree Connection app. Those are all great ways to make sure that you're hearing about upcoming meetings or any new project material. With that, thank you for listening to this virtual presentation. If you have any follow-up needs, whether it be to ask additional questions or seek specific information, Stacy Bridge-Denzak is the key contact for the town. Her contact information there is on the slide. And with that, thank you and have a wonderful day. And please make sure you go through the community workshop #2 feedback materials so that we can document everyone's comments and use that information to guide our efforts in actually drafting text for this general plan update. Thank you and have a wonderful day.